And welcome in. Oh, look, you can't see me. I'm over here on the wrong tab. Good morning, everyone, and welcome in to my daily mental health stream with lots of baby commentary in the background. My name is Doña, aka Doña the Light, and this stream is sponsored by me, Doña the Light. Check out my Etsy shop, mental health focused clothing and healing jewelry. Everything in here is has been created by myself. Me, myself, and moi. I've got some wrap stones, some rings, and then I also have a bunch of print-on-demand items because we're here to save the environment, y'all. Let's be honest. We don't want to order a bunch of stuff and then it never gets sold. So we've got shirts, sweaters, we've got hats, wall art, mugs, tumblers, journals, totes, hoodies, and stickers. I'll be posting more of my, my stuff that I've created, my jewelry and whatnot, very soon. But you know, life be lifing, as they say. So today is a Wednesday, which means today Diana is here. Diana's here. Diana Robinson, my wonderful friend, therapist in training. She's here to give us a skinny on some things. Good morning, DJ. How are you, buddy? Ooh, he's waking up, y'all. He's waking up.
All right. Good morning, DJ. Good morning, everybody.
Brandon the Assassin is in the chat. Good morning, Brandon. If you are here in the chat, please drop a hello to my son, DJ. He is here. He will grab a seat in a moment. But, yeah, today we're going to be talking about guilt and shame. We're going to be discussing what they are, how we heal from them. And Raylene is here too.
Hey, Raylene.
So yeah, don't forget to say hi to DJ, y'all. If you don't, he will flip tables. He doesn't know what that means, but he agrees to it when I say it.
Table flip.
Right. So yeah.
What about that table flipping life?
Right.
I don't know what that means. Don't ask what that means.
Table flipping life is a hard life, y'all. It's
a hard life, you know, but somebody's got to live it.
Somebody's got to do it. These tables must be flipped, okay?
I'm saying. These tables didn't need to be flipped. They'd nail them to the ground. I'm just saying.
Why aren't the tables nailed to the ground?
If you don't want your table flipped, nail it to the ground.
It's just that
simple.
Saying.
Anyway, we are not condoning, going out and just flipping random tables. Let me just put a disclaimer out there. Like that is not. We're joking, y'all. We're joking.
Don't do it.
You can flip your own tables. I don't care what you do with your own tables.
Right.
Anyway, all right, let me stop. So, shameless plug, real quick. Get your merchandise and coordinate, y'all. You got to coordinate things.
Make sure you get
before
stuff.
Life be lifing.
Get stuff. Get stuff. Purchase the
Get
merches.
Some stuff. Purchase the merches. The merches is awesome.
Yes, buddy. I know. Okay.
But yeah. So good morning, y'all. We are talking about guilt and shame today. Fun things to talk about, not fun things to experience.
Right.
So let's talk about it. Let's just dive right in. I think it's a good idea to differentiate and kind of provide some definitions, operational definitions, if you will, of what is guilt and what is shame. I think they get easily flipped, easily conflicted or confused, and are kind of used interchangeably a lot. And so I think it is helpful to understand the difference. But shame and guilt are both negative emotions or feelings that we have. They're on a spectrum of the vast array of emotions that we have. On the feelings wheel, I want to say they're like on the second or third tier of emotions there. Anywho, they are, reactive emotions, things that we tend to, when we experience them, it's in reaction to something else, whether it be something internal or external. It tends to be a reaction to something. And so shame really encompasses feelings that come from kind of what, either from like I said, it can be internal versus external, but it can be kind of your own inner voice, like your conscience, so to speak, or what other people might be saying. And so these feelings often make us feel like we aren't living up to certain standards. So we might feel, ashamed if we don't reach a certain, if we don't meet a certain standard. Basically, I think that's the simplest way to put it. Whereas guilt is more so related to feeling as though we failed ourselves, right? Or someone else in a different or in some way, either by doing or not doing something. And so that tends to be what kind of what leads to guilty feelings, right? So feeling as if you let someone down or yourself down in some way. And so yeah, so they're very similar, but again, can be very different as well. They have some differences. So yeah, we were looking at this website on choosingtherapy.com just to get some basic kind of talking points of what is the difference between shame and guilt. And so that's kind of what it already started outlining, what I was just describing. And then it goes further into just talking about what is shame, what are signs of shame, what is guilt, and what are signs of guilt. And so yeah, so just again looking at this little webpage here, again, shame makes us feel badly about ourselves. Tell him, baby. Sorry, I cannot not respond to him. He's talking. So shame makes us feel badly about ourselves, equating the negative feeling with being a bad person in some way, instead of having, done a bad thing, right? So shame is generally, again, related to not meeting up to some standard and kind of looking at yourself as a bad person in relation to that. Whereas, again, guilt is going to be more related to feeling badly because they did or did not do something, and can really trigger a lot of feelings of, I think both shame and guilt can lead to feelings of self-blame. I think a lot of times these two emotions are driven by self-blame in a way. We're blaming ourselves either for not meeting that standard or for not, doing something for ourselves or someone else, or for doing something that we, regret in some way or feel badly about. But yeah, these feelings manifest and they fester and they create really negative spirals of thoughts that can just can really trigger feelings of anxiety, depression, anger. I think anger is a very big, is connected very strongly to shame and guilt as well, because again, it's an acceptable emotion and that's easy for us to express. And when we're feeling guilty or shameful, again, it's feeling as if we've not measured up in some way, and that can make us feel angry or feel bad. I should say it makes us feel bad and we react in anger.
Yes.
And so one way that right before we were hopping on, Doña and I were talking about how, how we think of guilt and shame as more secondary emotions, right? It's not necessarily the base emotions of universal, like what everyone experiences: happiness, sadness, disgust, those types of things. Guilt and shame are more so reliant upon the thoughts and feelings that you have about certain things that have happened, right? So again, in reaction to something. And so it's more so, again, a secondary emotion, or what I like to call a manufactured emotion, something that we're creating by the thoughts and feelings that we have about something. So yeah, that's my spiel on just what is guilt and what is shame, and how I'm thinking about it. Yeah, what are your thoughts, Doña?
Well, real quick, Bruce Shocks, welcome in love, has said survivor's guilt hits me heavy and without warning. What are words? Without warning. Raylene says, maybe this is just England, but I've never seen anger being accepted. We're always told to get back to normal and are very much avoided during anger.
You know what? That's actually a really good point. I am speaking as an American, and that is more so. Yeah, I think that is more so prevalent and true for our society than it might be for others. So I appreciate that, Raylene. You're absolutely right. I didn't even consider that. But I'm absolutely speaking from the perspective of American society, because that's where I live and what I know most of.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's a really fair point. So it doesn't necessarily have to come out in anger. I would argue that it might end up coming out more in, like, if you're forced to suppress those things, sadness, depression, and things like that, may be more common. If kind of pushing down those feelings and reactions is more expected or acceptable. I think that would still lead to really negative outcomes, just expressed in a different way. And then you were speaking about survivor's guilt, right? We had another commenter speaking about
Yeah.
survivor's guilt.
Brushaks, if you
Hmm.
want to share a little bit more about survivor's guilt. I mean, I understand what it is, but just in your specific situation, I'm gonna have to speak like this
There you go.
apparently
You're
this
going to
morning
slow down and
because
enunciate. You okay?
it's getting rough. In your specific situation, what do you feel? I mean, it's from my perspective, I'm feeling it like, or perceiving it as, that should have been me. You know, why didn't I blank, get hurt, experience what that person experienced, etc., etc. And the worst part about that is, I mean, not only the fact that it kind of consumes us, but the biggest part is we don't have any control over that. And guilt and shame in that way and a lot of other ways, just like a lot of other emotions, tend to keep us in the past and keep us reliving and keep us reminding ourselves of things that already happened, whether it be past mistakes or things that are completely out of our control. Brushak says, blaming yourself for a friend or loved one dying in a traumatic event that you survived. Exactly. And again, because our mind wants to rationalize it, saying all of these things that are trying to help us figure out why we are still here and this person is not. When the reality is, there is no way to rationalize it. There is no way to tangibly say, I mean, we could even do it from a mathematic perspective, right? And saying, oh, well, sometimes it's as simple as, well, this person wasn't wearing their seatbelt. You know what I mean? Let's say it's an automobile accident. This person wasn't wearing their seatbelts and you were, given the accident and given what happened, this was the outcome because this person wasn't wearing their seatbelt, right? Whereas, again, our mind is trying to rationalize it and say, again, why did I survive? Brushak says, 18 and a half months ago, my house blew up. Lost everything. My grandmother died in the explosion and it's driven me to extreme drinking, DUIs, depression, etc. And this is all connected as well to our relationship with that person, you know what I mean? And Brushak, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that you even had to experience that in the first place. I'm sorry that, this accident took your grandmother out of your life, and again, in a way that was completely uncontrollable, the difficult part about this situation too is not only are you grieving the loss of your grandmother, but you're also grieving the loss of everything else. You're grieving the loss of your life. You know what I mean? You're grieving the loss of your house, of all your belongings, of so many things that you are grieving. And so all of that is compiled together. And again, we talked about coping mechanisms, and drinking is definitely one of the less healthy coping mechanisms, but it's very easy, and I feel like it's also kind of accepted, Good morning, Lincoln. Brushak says, and it was basically caused by negligence on a construction company, and I'm in a plaintiff in a major lawsuit.
Wow, my goodness. I am so sorry for all of those things.
Yeah, and the fact that it's still happening.
Right. One of the things I think is really important, specifically in this instance, but also in general related to guilt and shame, is levels of responsibility. Really, because what you just described, it was due to negligence of something that was completely out of your control, right? And so when we're talking about traumatic events specifically, and someone is dealing with these types of reactions, where they're feeling that survivor's guilt, or feeling like I should have done something different, or it's my fault that this has all happened, or it should have been me instead, is really taking some time to look at the different levels of responsibility and how much or little you actually played in that event and how much control you actually had. And so at the base, there's the unforeseeable, right? Accidents that happen, things that are just completely out of the blue, natural disasters and things like that. There's just no way to predict that thing would happen. that typically should result in feelings of grief, feelings of sadness, right? That's the natural reaction to that. Um, when someone does have some sort of responsibility in the event, right? They played a role in the event, but they didn't intend the outcome to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then regret is typically what's felt in that instance, or would be a um, kind of the typical or expected reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you are at fault, there is some blameworthiness here, like you intended harm, you intended this outcome. That is when guilt should actually enter the picture.
Right.
That's when guilty feelings should actually come in, because you intended something bad to happen and you acted intentionally to make these bad things happen. That's when a guilty feeling should actually be the response, right? Whereas when a horrible accident happens, like your house blowing up and all of these really awful things in connection to that were completely out of your control, it was completely unforeseeable. You had no responsibility in that action. You had no intention for those things to happen. Um, Grief and sadness is much more, um, you know, where not necessarily, I'm not going to say what you're supposed to be feeling,
Appropriate.
but it's would be an appropriate response, because it's an appropriate level of responsibility that you are ascribing to this event, right? It is an accident and it's awful, and so mourning and grieving that loss and grieving that event, absolutely, absolutely feeling guilty over that you survived and they didn't, or that these awful things have happened and you had no control over it. Guilt is not an appropriate reaction to that, because you didn't intend for these things to happen. You didn't take actions to make these things to happen.
Right.
And so you have nothing to feel guilty about, right? Like, and it's, I know it doesn't sound right when you're sitting in survivor's guilt or feeling these types of things. Like, that's not an easy thing to wrap your mind around, because you have extremely high emotions related to this event and related to these feelings of guilt or shame or blame. And so, me saying that you're hearing this for the first time, it's not going to necessarily sink in, but taking some time to think about, your level of responsibility and what your intentions were and what you actually would have wanted to happen, right? If you had control, if you were able to wave a magic wand, none of these things would have happened, I'm assuming, based on, the feelings that you're describing. So, you did not intend for these things. You didn't want these negative things to happen. So guilty is not something that, just guilty is not something that you should, I'm not going to should. It's not an appropriate response, because you didn't do anything to feel guilty for. And so, it's hard to break that cycle, but it's important. Like, I think taking time to challenge those thoughts of guilt and why you might be feeling that way, and taking time to recognize it and just telling yourself, like, wait a minute, yes, this is awful and I feel sad and I am grieving these losses, but I did not intend for these losses to happen. I did not intend for these damages to occur. I am not responsible or at fault, but I am very sad that this happened, and I'm very sad that I experienced this loss. And just maybe, renaming the emotions that you're feeling to be more appropriate to what it is that you've experienced, as opposed to telling yourself, like, I am still here and I should feel guilty for that. Although that's not the exact words that are playing through your mind, that's kind of the result of what is in the base there. But my goodness, those are incredibly difficult circumstances to be dealing with. And so I definitely, I appreciate y'all sharing your experiences here with us. And just, I really hope that even just sharing it here can lighten a little bit of that load.
Yeah, I really like the focus on what your responsibility actually was. Like, what actions did you specifically take that were a direct result, not necessarily a perceived result, but a direct result. A direct result of me pushing down the handle on the toaster is that it's going to pop back up. A direct result of me opening the refrigerator is that the refrigerator is open. You know what I mean? Like, those are direct connections. So again, just sitting with someone and, I mean, potentially having the conversations with ourselves as far as getting really down to actual, tangible, logical, direct connections instead of just what we perceive. Well, if I would have taken grandmother to the grocery store with me,
Right.
instead of leaving her at
Right.
home. Maybe, you know what I mean? That's not a direct, it feels like it
Yeah,
because that
because with
assumption makes
hindsight,
us,
you're like, yes, I can connect all of those events, and it's going in my memory, the way that I'm thinking about it, or the way that I'm
absolutely,
envisioning it, it's going to happen exactly how you want it to. You're
exactly.
trying to write the past, and you can't. You can't, and you also can't know that any of those things would change any of the outcomes.
Right, exactly.
You might have
I'll
taken,
show you what it's
you
for.
might
The
have went to the
evidence.
store, and there could have been an accident at the store. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
never know what is
Exactly.
going to be what. But building, relying on a what if kind of a thing is it's a slippery slope, because there's always going to be a what if I had, what if I had, what if I had.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then Rainine asked, is there a reason why it goes to survivor's guilt instead of grief? And then Sleepy added, I don't know when my brother passed. Like, yeah, I'm sad about, like, yeah, I'm sad, but I'm angrier more than sad, right?
Mm-hmm,
Um,
hmm.
is there a reason why it goes to survivor's guilt instead of grief? I believe this might be specific to the person, um, but I believe it connects to, I don't want to, is it maybe compassion? Might be
Well, the
compassion or
way that
empathy.
the way that I think about it, honestly, is um, trying to make sense of a traumatic event,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of, well, again, it's literally trying to rewrite what happened, right? Instead of focusing on what actually happened and the pain of the loss, it sometimes is easier for us or less painful for us to dwell in the space of what could I have done differently? How could I make it so this is not what happened?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, pushes us to the past instead of the present.
yes, it's basically it's very past focused, and it's focused on trying to rewrite what happened so that your brain can make sense of it, because your brain cannot make sense of what's happened, and so you're trying to fit this into your narrative in some way, and the only way to do that sometimes is to change your view of yourself, change your view of the world, change the thoughts and beliefs that you had prior to this traumatic event, because now you've got to make this event fit.
Mm-hmm.
um, and sometimes the process of making it fit, we get stuck in that process, and we get stuck on these thoughts of, well, I should have done more, I could have done something different, what if I had done this, what if I had said this, what if X, Y, and Z, and that keeps us stuck in the recovery process. Because when we experience a traumatic event, which all of us will experience some form of traumatic event in our lifetime, that is, if not all of us, 99% of us. I don't know the exact. So my professors are like, what? You don't know? Anyway, the exact ratio. But anyway, trauma is very, very common, and the way that we respond to it is also very, very common. The immediate reactions we have is, of having, just feelings of like difficulties with sleeping, maybe feelings of kind of thoughts and memories kind of popping into our minds about the event, kind of not reliving it, but kind of reliving it in certain ways, or just kind of recounting it in our minds, having being on guard or having startle reactions to things that remind us of that event, are all very common reactions after we've experienced something traumatic. But how we move forward and process those things really determines how we might recover from that traumatic event.
Right.
So if we are given a space where we are able to talk about what happened, like if we need to, because resiliency is actually the majority of the response, right? Having a traumatic response is less typical, but it happens when essentially we are not given a space to process what has happened, right? Because this traumatic event disrupts the way we think and feel about the world, or the way we know the world. Trying to fit this event into our narrative is difficult, and if we're doing that on our own, we're not able to make sense of that, and so we get stuck in this loop of just kind of what we call just non-recovery. Essentially, we don't recover from the event. And that can lead to things like post-traumatic stress symptoms. Whereas if we're given a space to talk about these things and, just honestly, just talking about them allows us to think about them in a linear fashion, like the entire event, what happened from beginning to end. It allows us to look at and challenge in accurate ways we might be reflecting on those memories in that event, and can, challenge some of the stickier thoughts that we have about that, such as I should have done more, I could have done something different, right? Like having some space to talk and process that, you might come to the realization like, oh, no, actually, I could not have done something different. That was out of my control. And that allows you, like, coming to that realization and knowing that allows you to then move into the space of grieving and mourning that, and experiencing those emotions, as opposed to being stuck in the space of I could have, I should have, I wish had, kind of a thing, trying to rewrite the past event, as opposed to processing it and healing from it. I feel like I was just talking for a long time. I'm gonna
so Relene asks, so it's like a coping mechanism gone wrong. Somewhat. I mean, to Diana's point, it's us trying to process it, but we are in this loop of processing instead of making progress in processing, because we haven't actually taken any additional steps to saying, okay, I can see how this blank. We're just constantly, like Bruchak says, I relive it. I have PTSD from it as well. And I relate it directly to my relationship with an abusive partner. I was reliving not only the situation, but also thinking that I was seeing him everywhere. Every time I saw literally a humanoid walking down the street, I thought, oh my goodness, is that him? And I'd be driving in a car. Like, it wasn't like I was walking myself, or it was like, oh no, yada, yada, yada. I'd be driving in a vehicle and I would see a person walking in that area where I assumed that he would be based on where I knew his mom lived. And anytime I was in that area, I would absolutely relive it. And I hadn't actually even processed that until last year when I did EMDR with my therapist. The only reason why was because it came back. Because Grover and I were hanging out, and we're having a good time, and we're goofing around, and he starts tickling my neck, and it went from a laugh to like panic very quickly. And I found myself on the floor in like the fetal position, like hunched over, and I was like, you gotta. I couldn't even put into words what I was experiencing. It's just like I felt very out of control, and like I wasn't really sure what was going to happen next. You know what I mean? And it had nothing to do with him as a person, and had everything to do with the experience that I was feeling, the sensations that I was feeling, because when I was in that abusive relationship, he held me down with his forearm behind my neck, my arm behind my back, and I felt that feeling of helplessness. Like I had no idea what was going to happen next. So yeah, and I wasn't able to ever actually process that. I never talked about it. I never got to the point where, I never processed it. I never dealt with it until I had the opportunity to speak to my therapist about it. And the only reason why she suggested EMDR was because of how deep I felt it. I know that her professional opinion would have been based on, how deep I felt those sensations and, my experience after that. So, Raylene says, is there a reason why some people try to reason the event, which leads to self-blame, whereas someone who experienced the same event deals with it in the appropriate way? Does it depend on the person's life prior? I believe that it does. And I also believe that, to Diana's point when she brought up resiliency, I believe that plays a role. Like, if I was able to process every event, and I'm talking about everything. I'm not just talking about stuff that we would constitute as trauma, but I'm talking about everything. Like, every disagreement, every discomfort. If I was able to talk about it and process it, that's what leads to resiliency. When we are in a space where we don't have the space or the person or the ability to have those conversations and communicate those things and process them to see logically, how did we get from this step to another? And sometimes the logically part is tough because emotions are always going to be involved, especially if other people are involved. But again, even if the logical response to, me hurting someone's feelings is that they respond this way, then I know that that's a logical response. You know, that's their logical response to this stimuli or this event or whatever. But I believe that that's what leads to us being able to, you know, deal with it in an appropriate way, is having experiences, it's almost like muscle memory. You know what I mean? Like having the ability to have done it before, you know? Raylene says I get that too. I didn't know that was a form of PTSD. I think, Raylene, I'm not sure. I'm assuming. I would have to look into it. And then Bruce Shock says, for what it's worth, today, February 8th, 2023, it's a hell of a lot easier talking about it when I'm not going through the symptoms and emotions. I'm now 5 months sober. That's beautiful. But I still get easily triggered.
That is wonderful. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Bruce Shocks. That is awesome.
Congratulations. That is awesome.
Seriously.
That's awesome.
It's not an easy thing to do. And you're doing it. You're absolutely doing it, right?
That is incredible. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I wanted to mention back to Raylene's point of like why some people might react one way versus another. Is it based on past experiences? And I feel like there's a lot of it depends, right? There's just a ton of individual variability that comes into play. Because in some trauma focused treatments, some of the more cognitive focused ones, we take time to actually look at how your traumatic experience has impacted the way that you think about yourself, other people, and the world in general. And then also in regards to specific themes of safety, power and control, trust, intimacy, and esteem. And we look at those things as they relate to both, again, yourself, others, and the world. And we're looking at those things, we take a moment to understand from the individual's perspective whether or not they had kind of positive views or negative views in relation to those things prior to their traumatic experience, because it can go one of two ways, right? So if you have, let's say that I have, I have this belief that a very common belief is like the just world belief, right? That all good things happen to good people. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people, right? If you do good things, you'll be rewarded. If you do bad things, you'll be punished. It's a just world, right? There's this belief that's the belief. Okay. And let's say that I subscribe to that belief and I experience a traumatic event. Let's say it's an interpersonal trauma, like sexual assault or physical abuse from a partner. My belief in a just world that good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people, I now have to make sense of this event that's just happened to me according to that belief, right? And so if I have had events in my life prior to that trauma that have confirmed my belief, right? I have been rewarded when I was good and I have been punished when I was bad. I have seen that play out in the world around me. Then I'm going to, it's been basically reinforced for me. Then this event now disrupts that. I have to really figure it shatters that essentially. We call it essentially shattering that world belief in that just world belief. And to make sense of this now, I'm likely going to turn towards, okay, well then that must mean like I've experienced this really awful thing. I must be a bad person. I must have done something to warrant this. I must have done something to deserve this. Because that's how you make sense of it, right? That's how. And if you're left to do this on your own, where you're not actually processing out loud, where someone can say, "Wait a minute, what you were wearing has no bearing on why nobody should assault you because of this, or no one should put their hands on you because of X, Y, Z. Like what you did did not warrant that response. Nothing you did could warrant that response, essentially, right? If you don't have someone that challenge those things, you won't be stuck in this cycle of, yep, okay, I deserved it. I did something to bring this on to myself. I am to blame. And that leads to guilt and shame, self-blame, obviously, right? And really negative thoughts about yourself. Whereas if prior to my traumatic event, I've experienced events where, I've done good things, but I've never been acknowledged or rewarded. When bad things happen, I don't see people get punished for that. And then this really awful thing happens. Well, that's going to instead of shattering my world belief, right? I don't necessarily believe that. So this is going to confirm my belief that, yeah, see, look, bad things are bad, and they're going to happen to everybody. Like I deserve, again, it's still kind of a, it can either shatter your belief or confirm your belief, essentially, based on what your prior experiences are. And so, again, how you respond to that, I think, really depends on a lot of different individual factors. And so what can contribute to resiliency versus, non-recovery from a traumatic event. I think really, again, it depends on some of those interpersonal factors or individual factors, but also how you respond to it in terms of talking about it, whether it's talking with somebody or journaling it, or, just trying to process it in some way outside of your own brain. Sometimes is the first step, because it can allow you to acknowledge, identify and acknowledge inaccuracies in how you're looking at things, and identify your actual level of responsibility. Identify who's the appropriate person to attribute blame to. And I think that's what comes from being talking about it and being able to process it, and that's what leads to the healing and the recovery, versus suppressing those feelings or suppressing those thoughts or not sharing those things, because we might feel shameful that this awful thing has happened to us, because we have some belief that I deserved it or I did something wrong. Or heaven forbid, you go and you share that with somebody and they respond to you as if it was your fault. That is another really common experience, and that prevents people from sharing and processing these things, because people respond really negatively when people talk about some of these experiences that they've had. And that, again, kind of reaffirms this idea oh shit, darn, I did something wrong. Sorry. I'm like, I don't want to. I don't know what the rules are in this live stream.
You're totally fine.
Okay.
That was so funny. All the words came out.
Welcome to my brain. Yeah,
right.
Like, welcome to my mind. But yeah, anywho, I'm gonna stop there and drink my tea.
So, Raylene asks, which I'm totally looking into healing right now, but Raylene asks, how do you heal from guilt/shame? Wow. How do you heal from guilt/shame when it is something you had part in/regretted? And then she also commented, that's interesting. I've been noticing how many odd beliefs I have. I think it'd be a good idea to write a list of all of them and work on breaking each one, the unproductive and negative ones, one at a time. Absolutely. And writing them down and reading them out loud might also just kind of help bring some, kind of viewpoint to it, as well as sharing it with someone and, just getting their honest opinion. But when it comes to
call
healing,
it keeping a thought record. It's super easy.
Yeah.
Like, what happened? What did I think? What did I feel?
There you go. When it comes to healing guilt and shame that you had part in/regretted. So first and foremost, in case y'all haven't gathered from the conversation that we've had so far, the primary differences between guilt and shame is that guilt says I did something bad, whereas shame says I'm a bad person. So typically shame, because it says I'm a bad person, can really, really be deeply connected to depression, I don't know anxiety, but I would say I'm going to say heavier mental health disorders and illnesses, like clinical depression, perhaps even...
It can lead to anxiety depending on what you're feeling guilty about, if it's something you did or did not do, or something that you need to do or have not done, absolutely it can definitely lead to anxiety.
Yeah, so these things, similar to what Diana said as far as guilt and shame not being primary emotions, you don't have something doesn't happen. Well, I can't say that. I'm not going to say something doesn't happen, you immediately feel guilty, because that's not true. But there's something underlying it. There's something underneath it. It's not just guilt. It's something else. But when it comes to healing guilt and shame, I believe when it comes to something that you took part in, whether you took part in it or not, I believe it's important to take a self-inventory of your actual level of responsibility, because that'll kind of help lead you to the rest of the healing process. So this article it's called Article from Counseling Matters, says, first and foremost, to acknowledge your feelings. That's the best thing you can do. Again, everything that I pretty much share with y'all begins with some level of awareness or acknowledgement, because you cannot heal from something that you cannot name or you cannot identify. So first and foremost is to acknowledge, and even if that's acknowledging, okay, what am I feeling? Am I feeling guilt or am I feeling shame? And then you can kind of move forward from there. Tip number 2 is to take responsibility for your life. Right? Just
well, I mean, truly, like, well, that's the thing though, like, because guilt can be healthy. If you did something objectively wrong, or you made a bad choice,
right,
or you had some level of responsibility in something that, that you feel some regret about, then like that is the moment that is already like, that is like the light of self-awareness. Like, oh shoot, I am not living in accordance with my values. What is it that I can do to get back in alignment with my values? And so guilt can be in a great awareness tool of like, oh, hey, wait a minute, I do not like this feeling. What is it that, what have I, being honest with ourselves, what have I actually done to contribute to this feeling? And how do I change that if I don't like that?
Yes. Which hopefully you don't like it.
Right. I mean, if that's your thing, I don't know. I don't know. That's a different stream. Go on, Doña, go on.
Super villain era. No, I'm just playing. Okay. So tip number 3 says find closure. And when it comes to this, it says acknowledge what happened, voice your feelings of loss, and celebrate that person's life. Okay, so this is talking about grief. Celebrate that person's life.
Well, I mean, it sounds like that could be kind of related to maybe a survivor's guilt kind of a thing.
For example, so this one, actually, yes.
Yeah.
It says, for example, let's say you were in a car accident and your passenger died. Do you feel shame and guilt over what happened? You can hold a ceremony where you specifically do these things. Acknowledge what happened, voice your feelings of loss, and celebrate that person's life. So this is an example of a letting go ceremony. Spiritually, I've heard it called a cord cutting, where you essentially cut ties with this person. And this could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be because of loss, or it could be because, this person is just no longer a part of your life. They're not dead, but they're just not a part of your life anymore. So that's actually a really good idea, regardless of whether the person has passed away, like living or dead. Having a letting go ceremony of some sort to celebrate, if there is anything to celebrate, that person, your relationship, etc. Acknowledge what happened, voice your feelings of loss. Bruce Shock said, some of my relatives celebrate the life of my cousins that died from AIDS complications. Yeah, and he would have turned 40 on Sunday. I feel that. I like celebrations of life. I just wish they were more, I don't know, we're not gonna get into that. But celebrations of life can be really wonderful, especially if they are deeply focused on that person and that person's life. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing, to bring people together for that specific purpose. Tip number 4 is to be creative as a way to express yourself, which, again, we've spoken about this a lot. For some people, journaling is wonderful for expression. For other people, voice recording or making videos. For other people, art is a great way to express yourself. For some people, working out is a great way to express yourself, like practicing, I was going to say like martial arts or something like that, weightlifting, strength training, whatever. For other people, other kinds of movement like dance and yoga are really great ways to express yourself. But yeah, just find some way to express or get out the things that you are feeling. Like I said, whether it be written on paper, coming out verbally, whatever that looks like for you. Number 5 is to try new activities. If y'all haven't done this already and have been struggling in any kind of way mentally, please look into volunteering. Was it like on an LED screen on my forehead? Because I was like, okay, I'm waiting for a moment. Like Diana is gonna say,
like,
volunteer work.
Like, get out of yourself and give back in some way.
Get out of your house. Get out of your just room. Whatever, and do something that you enjoy. You know what I mean? Like, you could volunteer at a library if you love books. You could even do something like reading books to children. You know, like
Yes.
a lot of times libraries have certain days and times that they will tell the community that there's someone there to read a book or two or three to a group of children. Perfect. You know, you could go to an animal shelter. You can go to a cat shelter, a dog shelter specifically. You could go
Community
to
garden.
Yeah, you could go to a community garden. You could do you could volunteer at, like, there's a nonprofit organization out here that specifically supports elderly people. And I mean, they do a little bit of everything, but one of the things that they do a lot of is supporting elderly people with, like, keeping their yards clean, especially out here where I live in the desert, where, like, if you have too much, I mean, overgrown, anything is a hazard anywhere, but out here where it's so dry, they may have
fire country.
Yes, they may have a beautiful lush lawn, but on the other side of their wall might be just a vacant desert. And so we want to make sure that their yards are kept up. And so you can volunteer. And I don't know if y'all have never volunteered with elderly people before.
It's fun.
It's so, like, because they legitimately just want to talk to you. Like, all they want to do is talk to you.
You get some of the best stories.
The best advice.
You get some questionable stories,
This
but
is
boy,
true.
you get it. It's interesting. It's not a dull moment.
It is. So if you can volunteer at, a convalescent home, et cetera, that's a wonderful way, again, to just get out of, and it could be super simple stuff. Like, it wouldn't be, I feel like, choose your labor. You know what I mean? Like, if you volunteer at a dog shelter, you're probably going to be doing some work. There might be turd involved. Just keeping it real. Whereas if you volunteer at a convalescent home, you might just be, assisting people getting from one room to another. Maybe you're reading them stories. Maybe you're just listening to theirs. Maybe you're just talking to them. Like, quality time is huge.
There might be turd involved there too. No,
this is true. There might be turd involved.
I don't know.
It's very true.
Depending on what level of volunteering you want to do.
Right.
It's up to you.
And in a random kind of addition, I've heard a lot of people say, especially mothers, single mothers, that they struggle to find, like, a village. They struggle to find people who they can connect with and have conversations with and, kind of lean on a little bit when it comes to their children. Although elderly people at a convalescent home are not related to you, I guarantee they would love for your children to be around. You know what I mean? They would love to talk to you about your baby or your toddler or your child or you know what I mean? Like, they would love that. So just, when you need a break.
I think that is a brilliant idea.
You know what I mean? Like, from your childing.
We
gonna go see, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I like it.
Jones in the chat. Like, I'm not old. But yeah, just a thought. Because sometimes, children be children and they got a lot of energy. All they want to do is talk, right? Like, who would love to speak to your child or listen to your child speak? Someone who hasn't had a child in 40 years. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe, so.
This is true. Feel it out.
Yes, feel it out. Read
Feel
the
it
room.
out. Jones said, is it my time? Jones, it's your turn. It's your time to go to a convalescent home. You're done, Billy. You're done. You gotta, you've done.
Sorry to inform you this way in such a public space. We didn't
You've done all you can do. Okay, look, I gotta hurry up because we gotta wrap up soon because it's almost time for school for DJ. I forgot he has school early today. Okay.
Okay.
Number 6 is find acceptance, which is if you're unable to adapt and adjust to how things are, you'll keep trying to reach back to a time before the trauma. You keep trying to force things back to how they were. Trying to force things back to how they were won't make things better. She calls you out. It was loving, Jones, I promise. It was very loving. But yeah. You'll always be brought back to the harsh reality, right, of the here and now. Why you gotta do a fellow Zandalari enjoyer like that? I just, he's fine. So yeah, find acceptance comes with, after trauma, there's a new normal, right? Things are just different. Let's be completely honest. Things are different. So finding that acceptance has to do with coping and accepting that new normal. And my eyes itchy. But yeah, moving forward, you definitely want to do those kinds of things. And at every step of this process, if you need support, please reach out. You know what I mean? Reach out to myself, reach out to Diana. Even though she's not technically allowed to support you herself yet, she can absolutely she can absolutely provide resources to you.
That I can do.
And I can do the same. Where we at? Okay, so hold on. So Bruchak said, I thought that was messed up at first, and I got close to said relatives, and it started to make sense. Oh, okay, as far as the celebration of life in my 30s. And then Bruchak says, I'm seeing bits and pieces of that new normal. Some consistency would probably go a long way for my self-worth, esteem, and image. And consistency, I just want to let y'all know, like, consistency does not mean every day. Consistency just means in a pattern. It could be every Tuesday. Adri had came in here yesterday, and when I was in her stream, she was saying that she was going to do something on T days. So just the days of the week that start with T.
Love it.
Do something on T days, do something on my S days, which is a Saturday and Sunday. Just do what works for you. But just, I always encourage everybody to start off slow. Like, don't start off every day. Start off, shoot for once a week. You know what I mean? Like, just start there. And then if that seems too overwhelming, do every 2 weeks. Even if it's just something as simple as, like, taking yourself on a date or checking in with yourself, or scheduling time for you to just be completely alone. For some people that's great, for some people it's not. For some people they need to schedule alone time, for some people they need to schedule social time, but just make that effort to do that, and make sure that you are very intentional. If there are 2 or 3 people that you love spending time with and you want them to be there for your social time, keep consistent communication with them. Follow up with them regularly, confirm the plans, to make sure that you can do what you need to do to get the support that you need, or to get that healing that you need. But it does not have to be every day. It really, really doesn't. Once a week is beautiful. Twice a month, beautiful. Because after that month is up, you can say to yourself, like, hey, I said that I was going to do this 2 times this month, and I did.
I held myself accountable.
I pulled through.
That feels good.
I showed up for myself, and it feels wonderful. Now, for a lot of people in our go, instant gratification society, waiting to confirm that at the end of the month sounds like it's just too long. But guess what? The time is going to pass anyway.
Sure is.
Time's going to pass anyway, y'all. I just want to let y'all know. So we got to wrap this up. Diana has to go. I got to go. We love you all so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of your vulnerable stories. Thank you for sharing your experiences. If y'all can drop a DJ bye to DJ in the chat. I'll be posting this, of course, on YouTube. And I just love you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Yes.
If y'all want to get in contact with Diana, I'll pop her email address. Well, her email address will be in the description of the YouTube video on the replay. Everyone's saying bye to you, buddy, because I'm wrapping up.
Bye, DJ.
Thank you, love. So yes, I will see you all tomorrow. What's up?
Can I go to Grandma's house?
No, you gotta go to school.
I need to go to Grandma's house.
You can go to Grandma's house later. Anywho,
No,
I love you all.
Later.
Thank you, Raylene, for dropping my YouTube link. But yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow. Diana, you ain't gotta go yet. I'll say bye to you too. But yeah,
I will see y'all next week.
Yes. Have a beautiful day, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.